And welcome back, guys, to another series of recaps. I am currently in Ireland and I'm playing in a tournament called the Sligo Chess Festival. And it's actually quite a small tournament. I think in my group there are only like 40 participants, but the organizer does a great job to, give all of the participants a great time here. And I've been really enjoying it here so far. And today was the first round. And I played against an Irish local player called Moriss, who is actually already 79 years old, but he gave me a pretty good fight in this game, as we are about to see. Another thing which I need to say is that I'm actually streaming my games here, and on many of the days we even have commentary for the games. So if you have time, make sure to tune into that. I think it's really a good, it's really a level up in terms of quality. Hopefully also the recaps with a new microphone, as you can see here. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm using a new microphone, so hopefully there will be no sound issues from now on as well. And I'm streaming my games today. It was at 4 p.m. local time, which is, by the way, 1 hour earlier than Central European time, if most of you perhaps are in Central Europe. Next round is tomorrow. Before I forget to mention that, next round is tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. There will be no commentary for that, but still you will have the view where I'll be playing and also the live board view in case you want to tune into that. And there will be commentary again, expert commentary in all of the games. All of the commentators have at least an IM title, which makes it very cool to watch. I was also rewatching now the commentary of today's game, and was great to see. Shout out to all of the commentators who do, at least so far, who do a great who did a great job today. Next round tomorrow 9:30. The one after that is at 4 p.m. local time. Again, this is going to be 5 p.m. Central European time, again with commentary. So that was enough for that. The streams are amazing. Go check it out. And kudos to the organizers for making this, for allowing me to stream my games. All right, so let's have a look at the game. I started with knight f3 today. Funny story about my opponent. I briefly checked his games. There was like an hour time to have a look at the opponent. And with white, funnily enough, his main repertoire is to go 1b4. So, I was kind of joking that why do I have to be white against him if this is what he would most likely go for with the white pieces. But of course, I was also not necessarily complaining to play white. So I played knight f3, he played knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, d5, and I thought I would play the so-called Chimer system with e3, which I was quite sure that he probably didn't study as much, because it's more of a recent development, and he probably has a lot of experience with the main systems, which were more popular back in the day. But this was a more recent development, and I think it was a pretty good choice to go for that. He went for c5, which is one of the main moves. Black can also develop with moves like bishop e7 or bishop d6. Generally, white aims for a slow development on the queen side with b3, bishop b2. This is more the point of the Chimer system. Yeah, he went for c5. Now, usually white takes on d5. There is also d4, which could transpose to some bigger lines instead, but this is generally the whole idea, to take on d5. He took back with a knight. E takes d5 is another possibility, but knight takes d5 is a solid move. And here I was actually thinking, because white has a couple of interesting options in this position. In the end, I decided to take on d5 with a knight, which is one of the possibilities. Apart from that, I was also considering queen c2, which is another interesting possibility. I briefly remembered that this is possible, with the idea to transpose back to some of the bigger lines like this. And now maybe some of you have seen this before. There are some ideas with h4 here, which usually is reached with another move order. Let's just put this on the board, short castle, bishop b2, c5, and this is how you usually get to this position, queen c2. yeah, this is possible. I guess that black has some other extra options along the way rather than developing with bishop e7. But I knew that this sort of exists. But in the end, I decided to take on d5. Actually, I was still unsure if he would have taken back with the pawn, which in my opinion is the more reasonable move. Which option I would have gone for? There is bishop b5 check, which is fairly solid, and there is also maybe there's also d4 in this position, but I'm not so sure about this here. Maybe black can go for c4. There is always the option for this, and if it works, this is usually a good thing to do for black. Usually white would like to counter with b3, but I think that runs into bishop b4 check, which looks unpleasant now because bishop d2 c3 is going to lose the piece. I cannot go back because of c2. There is also the very interesting option of going b4, which I was also considering. I hope I'm not giving away too much from my future games now, but I was actually not so sure which one I would go for. b4 is quite interesting, which I don't think is being played so much anymore nowadays. Generally, I guess that black is not going for this line with c5 in that many games, I would say. Mostly they go for bishop e7 or bishop d6 or b6 or a6, those type of things. But this line exists, and it's quite interesting. The idea is if black takes, white will get pretty nice compensation actually, because this bishop on f8 cannot develop because g7 is hanging. I was considering, like I was briefly calculating something like this, and yeah, maybe I would have gone for that. But generally, I think also this option of going bishop e5 check is quite pleasant for white, even though black usually is quite solid in some positions like this. I don't know how he takes. He can take with the queen or with the knight. But generally, white will get some type of isolated queen's pawn position, I think, in many of the lines. Like something like this could generally happen, and at some point white can take, and then d5 can be weak. But black is very solid. But he took with the queen, which was kind of a happy surprise for me, because first of all, he's moving the queen early in the opening, and which will result in me targeting it with bishop c4 in the next move. And now also his move knight c6, Engine doesn't say that it's like a big problem or anything, but it does allow me to go for bishop b2 now, which hinders black from developing naturally on the king side now, because this bishop cannot move. So I thought in the game that this could be more precise, to start with bishop e7 and then short castle. But also here I have quite a few interesting options. Like I was even here considering if I could go for something like this with a3, and then perhaps some ideas with bishop d3, h4, knight g5. That could have been a possibility, like something like this. Bishop b4 is there, h7 is weak, or is hanging at least. Yeah, so that would have been an option also, to play solid with bishop c4, short castle. I guess is reasonable as well, but then black is probably quite solid in some position like this. d4 could have bishop f6 then. So I was mostly looking to some more dynamic possibilities with playing on the king side, if he would have gone for bishop e7. But he went knight c6, now bishop e2, and now he cannot develop the king side. Bishop d7, and actually he found some pretty nice resources here. He bishop c4, now he went queen h5, which after I went short castle now, which seemed like by far the most logical move, he always has some threats on h2. I realized that it definitely should not be enough for him, but it's always a bit unpleasant, like if there's a major threat or a major possible threat on h2, you always have to watch out for that. And I also didn't really want to go for something slow like h3 now, because then you can castle short, and yeah, whenever I go d4, a lot of material is probably gonna disappear from the board after he takes on d1. Of course, I should also explain that bishop takes g7 was, of course, a move which I considered, but it looked incredibly dangerous after rook g8. I was trying to figure things out here, like if I go back to c3, it seemed like the most natural square to me. If he goes e5, I thought I might have some ideas with knight takes e5. Still not sure if that actually works. The idea was if queen takes d1, then bishop takes f7. Let's say king e7. Then I can take on d1, and I will probably win this exchange on g8. But some position like this, for example, like I had no idea how to evaluate that. I have a lot of pawns. I have 3 pawns, but on the other hand, black has a lot of activity here as well. And apart from that, I had no idea if all of this was actually forcing. On top of that, black could even have the interesting option of just castling queenside immediately. And I am definitely in the defensive position here, because G2 is quite a target. He's going to go E5 next anyway. I don't have any counterplay whatsoever with B4. I mean, I could, but it's going to be way too slow. I could maybe defend passively with something like bishop E2 and G3, but it just didn't seem like a practical decision. So I decided to go for D4 immediately, and I think that was probably the best choice. I was also considering to go back with the bishop first, and maybe threaten some knight discoveries, but now I'm realizing that probably he can just castle anyway, and yeah, knight e5 is probably not even a threat because he can just go queen to h6, and I cannot take on d7 because there's going to be checkmate on h2. So I went for d4 with the concrete idea that if he takes on d4, which is the move I anticipated, otherwise he has some problems now. If he castles short, then I'll take on c5 probably, and he has some issues along the d file. Maybe it's not lost just yet, but it looks quite strange. I'll play rook c1, maybe threatening some discoveries. So he took on d4, which I thought was the most practical decision, and now I took with the bishop. Maybe another option would have been e takes d4. It was also, I think, covered in the live stream by the commentator. And what I had troubles with here was that generally, like, first of all, he could go knight d7 immediately. Short castle, now d5, those positions are just nothing much. Maybe I have some chances because I have the more active pieces, but I don't want to go into a position like this against a much lower rated opponent because the drawing margins definitely increase. Another thing I was looking at was then something like knight e5. But again, if he, like, maybe he can go for something like rook d8. But even a position like this, I'm definitely better here. But black is very solid and has a nice bind on the light square, so I was not happy to go here. There was a nice trick though. If he goes queen h6, I thought I'm winning with bishop c1. I cannot take immediately because there's queen h2 mate. But after bishop c1, I thought he's running out of squares with the queen. And if queen h4, then I thought I have g3. And then I can take on d7 on the next move. But yeah, I also thought that, like, here after takes, maybe you can go knight e7 immediately and then bishop c6. Again, maybe knight e5, but it will lead to something similar like we've just talked about. And I think that black is quite safe in a position like this. So I just decided to take with the bishop. Obviously cannot take with a knight because there's going to be checkmate on h2. So I took with the bishop, which looks a bit strange, but on the other end, black is still lacking a bit of development. And g7 is also can be hanging at the very least. He took on d4, which came as a pleasant surprise, actually. Even though it was probably a good move. I was mostly considering, or I was actually unsure what to play after bishop c7. Because now he still keeps the option to take here. And I was still not sure if I actually want to take this pawn, because again, it looked scary. I thought I have a better version now compared to earlier, but I was still not 100% sure here. Probably I would have went for this. I mean, there's still no concrete checkmates. Like, I can go for something like bishop e2 and keep everything protected, but I didn't like it so much, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, I could have also gone back with the bishop, and it was very difficult to evaluate those positions in general. Like, you almost never see opposite side castling in those classical structures. Yeah, it was difficult for me to evaluate, but I thought it's at the very least it's still a fighting game with chances for both sides. But he took on d4 immediately. Okay, I have to take with the queen now. If I go to an endgame, then well, first of all, there's checkmate on h2 still. Even forgot about that already. But even if he goes to an endgame, I have practically no winning chances. Even he might have that because of the bishop pair. Same applies to e takes d4. Then he can just castle short. So I need to play concretely here. I took on d4 with the queen. Bishop c7 now is, I think, forced. He cannot go for something passive like this. Then I will just play something like rook d1, knight e5, everything is just coming, and yeah, his king is going to be in a lot of trouble. So he played bishop c7, and now I accepted the challenge to take on g7, with the point that after long castle, which he played almost instantly, I can immediately exchange queens. We will go to that in a second, but I was a bit concerned if he starts with bishop c6. I still didn't check this yet, with the engine. But hear me out for a second. So first of all, if I take here, king e7, queen takes a8, then he can take on f3. And I did not see a way to actually defend against all of the threats. If I go g3, then queen h3 is going to be checkmate on the next move. If I go for something like h3, then I thought he can just go, was it queen g5 here? At least it looked very scary. Maybe there are also other options, but I just felt like I couldn't survive this g3, for example. He can take on g3 with the bishop, and I think I'm getting checkmated. So I actually wasn't sure what to do here if he starts with bishop c6. I thought I could have the absolutely insane looking option with g4 here, with the point that if he goes to h3, I didn't really see any other squares for the queen. Otherwise, I can just take on g7, I think, on h8. Like if he goes to c5, then I can just take here and maybe even go back to g7 or back to d4, offering an exchange of queens. So that shouldn't work. And if queen h3, now again, if I take, I think I'm not really surviving this. It's just too many threats. But I have queen takes f7, and this is what I was looking at for some time. And I was still not sure about a position like this because he does have quite a bit of threats on the open files, but I also thought that I'm sort of safe here. At least if I get the move f3, then everything is sort of covered, and maybe you can equalize with a move like h5, but I do have 2 pawns after all. Maybe it's concrete and he has something like bishop f3, yeah? But generally I felt like I should be sort of safe here. Maybe a move like knight f4 and then h3, but yeah, it can also be scary, yeah? Like rook g8 and not so easy to see. Maybe h3, h5, and trying to go for some simplifications, but I have no clue if this line was reasonable at all. I was also looking at bishop b5, which is another funny idea, with the idea being if he takes now, then he's 1 tempo too short. And yeah, now he would have to go back with the bishop, and I should be able to keep everything covered somehow. Like it still looks a bit scary, but he should not checkmate me here. Like even if I move the rook here, and then I'll be able to take something along the c-file, and I'm just ahead by too much material. But after bishop b5, I realized that now he can... what was my problem now? Trying to figure out what I was looking at. Because I did see some issue with this. Huh. Maybe this was not so bad after all. Let me quickly check what the computer says here. I did see some issue, but bishop e5 is actually winning. And it's the only winning move, it seems like. I thought that there was some issue with this move. Was it king e7? Maybe what I was thinking about, but then I can... Yeah, I think I was looking at king e7. What is going on here? Bishop c6 and then some rook g8. I can go queen c3. And f3 is covered. I think this is the part I missed. I thought now he can take with the queen on f3. So that's actually quite beautiful, bishop b5. What about g4? I'm quite curious about this. It's probably a draw somehow, like queen h3. What were we looking at? Queen f7, take, knight g5, king e7. It was actually all correct. But this is already quite dangerous. h5 and black is winning. hg, just too dangerous. Yeah, I still have some chances here with knight g5, bishop takes g4, and then h3. This is what the computer is claiming with triple zeros, as we are used to. But yeah, bishop e5 is a nice move. Actually, the next winning move is bishop d5, which is even more insane. It's not as strong as bishop e5, but it's also a nice idea. With the point that if he takes, I can take on h8, king e7, and now queen c3. That's actually pretty sick. So we could, I think, make this an exercise for our students. If we add that this pawn is not on a7, but instead on a6, then bishop d5 should be the only winning move in the position. That's pretty cool. Anyway, he did go queen set castle. King e7 is a bit of a better move objectively, but it will still lead to this endgame, which is a better version than in the game, but still I'm the one who is pressing there. So he went queen set castle and now queen g5. He told me that this is the move he missed. He was hoping for this resource with bishop takes h2 now. But the problem is that I don't have to take. I can go king h1, and after taking, I think what he missed is that now both f7 and h2 are hanging, and if he goes bishop e5, I can anyway take here, rook a1, and I will win back the exchange, and I'm a pawn up here. So he decided to take on g5, which actually I thought was a great try after that. I was mostly anticipating queen g6, but after that I thought I have some options. Like, I would probably not take here, it would also give me a pleasant endgame, but I would have options like to go rook c1 first, or even bishop b5 is an option. But after he took and went rook g8, I was actually quite shaken, because I thought now he has to play passively with a move like rook f8. But it turns out that I cannot take either of the pawns. Like, if I take on h7, this knight is definitely going to get trapped, maybe bishop e5, and if I move the rook, like, I just couldn't imagine this knight was getting out. Maybe even immediately rook h8, and if I move, then h2 is hanging. I didn't even consider knight h7 here. But knight takes f7 runs into rook f8, knight h6, and then rook g6, and my knight is also getting trapped. And there were some pretty nice ideas for black here, and I think f4 is the only move to even keep the advantage. Because if I go back to, let's say, f3, then he has bishop c6, and if I want to keep everything covered with bishop e2, now he has an insane idea, which is the move rook d2. And I think here I'm probably already lost, because if I take, then he has rook takes g2 check, king h1, take, and checkmate on h1. That was a pretty nice line, which I looked at, and if I do something like this, and he can take here and take on f3, and black will win. So, and also other moves had problems, like knight h3 just looks bad, yeah. And I thought he has a few options, like even e5 could now be considered, and the knight is in a strange situation. Still bishop c6, like this just looked wrong. If I go h4, then he can still go for h6. That was another one of my issues. Knight takes f7, rook f8, and the knight is still gonna be trapped on h6, and I'm gonna lose. So I played f4, which is a bit of a committal decision, because e3 is gonna be weak, but I am protecting the knight, and now I'm actually threatening to take on f7, because the knight can then go back to g5 or back to e5. He went bishop b6, and I played king f2 here. Bishop c6, I thought that was natural. King f2, actually, I spent a lot of time here. I was also considering to go rook e1, and if bishop c6, then to go for something like, I think, looking at like rook f2 or g3. But in the end, I decided to go for this, so that my rook can then go to the d file, which seemed, or this rook can go to the d file, which seemed a bit more natural. So bishop c6, rook d1. I still cannot take on f7 in those lines. Like, if I take here, then he can take on e3, followed by bishop c6, actually. That was the problem. And I cannot keep this protected. Maybe I can take and go bishop h3, but I mean, it just looked, I was trusting my intuition that I should not go for that. And I think I was correct with that assessment. So king f2, bishop c6, rook fd1, I need to keep this covered. And he played h6, and now knight f3. And here is where he really started to drift. Until here, I think he was fighting pretty well, even though I have a clear advantage now. In the game, that wasn't so clear to me. Because if he goes for this endgame now, let's just say he takes here and takes on d1. I realized that I have great winning chances and that I would probably win the game, being the stronger player. But he would definitely be able to give quite a fight here, because whenever I trade rooks, then I think it's just a basic draw. My whole winning idea now was to go bishop d3, then king e2, and then start pushing the pawns here on the king side, and black needs to suffer quite a lot here. But I still think that this was the best decision. He went bishop c7 instead, and now I just consolidated g3. Still, I think he should have taken on f3 here. With g3, I was already preparing to move the knight, since then g2 was not hanging anymore, but he played b5, and after that it really went downhill, because b5 only makes matters worse on the queen side. b5 just weakens his position. Yeah, now he played a6. Engine gives rook takes d1, and still bishop takes f3. And now rook d8, but I mean, now even I can imagine that this endgame could be winning. Not sure that I would go there in the game, but I could imagine that it could already be winning. But even something like this, now with this b5 pawn, black has a worse version for sure here, with this pawn being weak. So he played a6, and now actually, yeah, quite simple, but at the same time instructive. Knight d4, bishop b7, and now I'm breaking his queen side with a4. He took on a4. If he goes b4, I will just play rook c1. He has all of these holes. I will also be ready to exchange his bishop on b7 with bishop f3, and then he's going to be stuck with his bad bishop on c7, since the pawn on b4 will also be weak. He took on a4, rook takes a4, and now a5. I think his position is already lost here. Computer gives this rook d6 and bishop b6, but yeah, just an endgame with 2 pawns down should not give black any chances of survival. a5 and now rook c1. I think I played this stage of the game pretty well. Now I'm threatening all sorts of knight b5, even taking on a5, rook c4. So he played king b5, king b8. This is the move I was expecting, and now b4 was my whole idea. And yeah, he has to give the pawn on a5, but after that it's an easy win. In the game he took, but after rook takes b4, there are too many threats here, and black's king is actually quite unsafe. Played bishop d6 and now knight c6 check, and here he resigned. If he goes to a8, I will just checkmate him, rook a1, and mate in 1. And if he goes to the c file, I will take with check, and then I will also take on b7, and it's game over. So I was actually quite surprised that when I went through this now, seeing kind of the live evaluation, that I think I played a pretty decent game. I was not so sure. I thought that I would have left out some better chances like earlier in the game, but he played this quite interestingly with bishop d6, and I think the way I chose was pretty decent. And computer also says that bishop takes d4 actually is the best here, and to go for this line, and yeah. So that was round number 1. As I said, the second round is going to start tomorrow on Tuesday, if I'm not wrong. Today is Monday. Second round is going to start tomorrow on Tuesday at 9:30 local time in the morning, which is 10:30 Central European time. And the third round will also be tomorrow. There's a double round tomorrow at 4:30 local time, which is 5:30 Central European time. Third round is going to be, again, with commentary. So let me know, guys, if you have enjoyed this recap and if you enjoy the live stream overall. There was a lot of work that was put into this. Special thanks to Emilia Castelao, the CEO of the Women in Chess Foundation, who has helped out a big deal with all of the coverage and has put together all of the things which were necessary for the live transmission. So huge thanks to her. And huge thanks also to all of the commentators. Yeah, so that was it for today, and I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. I will only record 1 recap per day. Seems a bit too much to record 2 recaps for a double round, so I'll be back tomorrow night with another recap. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you then.